Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm here with Jessica, Jessica Kaplan, and Holly Marie Cook. This is our first testimonial interview. So we're filming this testimonial because I think testimonials are really important. And after Jess saw Holly, she expressed to me that Holly released for me in 2 hours what all the years of therapy could not. That is very powerful to me. So obviously want to know more about what Holly does, and I want Holly also to share more about how this happens. So I'm going to start a little bit with Holly's bio, and then I'm going to let Holly speak to a little bit about how these things take place. Holly Marie uses the shamanic arts, regression, modern knowledge, and intuition to help people see deep into their subconscious and beyond. The system Holly has developed allows her clients to easily work through hidden beliefs, programs, and trauma that are held on a cellular level. When these energy imprints are cleared, true empowerment and emotional freedom take place. Many clients seek Holly for deep-rooted traumas that need to be cleared through the DNA, inner childhood, soul retrievals, forgiveness, and emotional clearing to free themselves of mental slavery. Becoming liberated from negative programming is the key to moving forward in all areas of life. Subconscious patterns affect our career, our relationships, and the way we experience and react to everyday situations. Our bodies are no different than computers when it comes to programming. What we sense or take in through our eyes, ears, and energy field immediately can program a negative or positive outcome in our entire energy body system. Negative programs will eventually manifest into the physical, causing health problems or dis-ease. And more importantly, they shape our reality. Okay, now that I've read that bio, I would like to actually start with Jess. So Jess can share, how do those words that I've just read resonate with your experience of Holly?
Yeah, I think they quite frankly perfectly resonate. I think when you haven't experienced energy work before, and we've talked about this, Belinda, you're not very sure on what it means, right? If you're not in touch with energy, you really don't know, because people frankly use that word a lot these days. Oh, your energy, your vibe, and it's trendy. So we don't have access to what it actually means. So when you approached me about Holly, at first I was unsure because I had never had that really deep integration work. And it is work. And it's so powerful. And I feel like words can't really express, what it does. I feel it's a feeling. It is energy. We're made up of energy. And I think when you write it on paper, it's hard to kind of understand what exactly it is. And you just have to try it to really, it's transformative in your body. So it's not in other forms of therapy, it's very in your head, right? Talk therapy, I talk to you, I get out my feelings, I solve them, or whatever it is we think we're going to get out of talk therapy. But energy is a full body experience. But Holly is, as I've told her, a magic worker. She's magical. And yeah, everything you said feels right.
Okay, so then, going back to your testimonial, Holly released for me in 2 hours what all the years of therapy could not. Do you want to give a little bit of background about that, Jess?
Yeah. So I have been in therapy since I was 16, and which is a very young age to start therapy. It was something my parents never pressured me into therapy. It was something I at 16 wanted to do. I don't know why. And I feel like talk therapy, there are so many benefits to it. But there was a feeling like I was coming to a road and I just felt like a stop. I was talking and talking, and and sometimes in therapy we can complain and be more prone to negative talk, and the therapist kind of validates that, and we're just kind of in this cycle where I felt like I'm talking about my problems, and in this session I might feel a little bit better, but then I go back into the world and I'm like, nothing's changed. I told someone that I had a problem, but what has been integrated in my life that makes a difference? So I just felt stuck, and I wanted something different. And I've tried cranial sacral, which I love, which is energy work. I had tried Reiki, which is also energy work, and I love both of those modalities, but I felt again that it wasn't getting very deep or deep enough for me. I felt like some of the Reiki and energy work I loved it and I felt good. And then the integration part wasn't as effective. So with Holly, uh, it just goes so deep within my soul. And again, I feel bad because I can't articulate how I want to about the transformation of it, because it's this feeling in my body that I can't tell anyone, but they themselves have to experience, and then they know. Like if I talk to someone else who had gone to you, Holly, I bet you we wouldn't even have to say words. We'd be like, did you? Uh-huh. Yeah, I felt that too. Like we would just instantly know, like we went on this journey. We were separately on the journey, but we just understand each other. Like my friend just did ayahuasca, and with the way they talk to each other, they went on this journey together that only they know. And that's kind of how I feel. But yeah, talk therapy, just again, nothing against talk therapy. I love therapy. It just wasn't, let me say it this way. I have a lot of trauma, especially from my childhood, and talk therapy wasn't trauma lives in our body, right? No matter how smart you are, no matter how logical you are, you can talk it out, you can try to solve everything. It's in your body. It lives in your body. And what energy work and what Holly did was she released such deep wounds and early trauma that I could not get and release through therapy and talk therapy and other modalities, that she was able to use through breath work and imagery and colors. And I don't know, it's like you go out into this other universe and you tap into that, and then it comes out. It's so, again, I wish I could explain it better, but it's like there's a knot, right? There's a knot in my body, and it's so tightly wrung and I can't release it. And she goes in without physically touching me, right? And just through her work, and opens the knot and like releases the knot. And I no longer have a knot, is the best way I can put it right now.
It sounds wonderful. And now, Holly, can you please share what it is that you do?
Yeah, I love the knot analogy. I love that knot analogy. That's brilliant. So yeah, I wish I could take credit, but it is actually the modality. And I do want people to know that we were several states away during this session. One of us was in Oregon, one of us was in Florida. So we're literally collapsing space and time. But the modality that I use, it just, when I started learning the shamanic process called the illumination process, because my shamanic lineage is from South America, and it's actually the mystics of Peru. And, people have different gifts in the shamanic arts. And the thing that my gift was kind of tracking the issue back to the very first time it happened. And that just, I ran with that and I grew that. So it's what I'm actually doing with somebody, whether they're in person or remote, because I'm actually using their chakra system as a timeline measurement table. And I am literally I'm hearing their story and what was the feeling, right? Because a lot of people will describe what happened, but they're kind of disassociating the actual emotion with it. Because when we feel that emotion, then we feel the pain again. So it's literally moving that person into that emotion. And then I'm testing out their chakra system, like I said, as a timeline, and clearing it from those timelines in the energy field. But Jess, you totally nailed it too, when you were talking about the frequency and the feeling, because that is the actual energy being lifted up and out. So I don't feel like a session is successful unless we go right back to that root of the trauma, to the very first time it started. If we're working up here, like, oh, you know, my boss makes me feel neglected, or, you know, my husband makes me feel uncared for, or whatever the surface issue is, we can work on that all day long. But if we don't get back to that root, you know, did it happen between 1 and 7 years old? Did it happen between 8 and 15 years old? Those are the first and second chakras that are the most commonly in need of clearing when someone comes in for a session. So if we're not tracking back to that childhood issue or that teenage issue, this stuff up here is just going to keep, it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to go anywhere, because is what we created was an actual fractal. The very first time that happened, that trauma that you felt neglected or unworthy, or, you know, whatever, you replicate that in your life pattern over and over and over again. So working on the top of the pattern is useless, basically. You need to do the deep dive.
So, I mean, I'm hearing you talk about traumas, right? And things that happen along the timeline, but I also know that you do past life regression and ancestral work. So are you saying, I mean, there are times when people's trauma actually happened ancestrally or in a different life, and then you're able to track that and address that in the work that you do with your clients?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of times when we're working on like a trauma in this life, we can, I don't know, it's just, you'll just know, right? A lot of times I'll just test it out with my pendulum, right? Using dowsing, is this in this lifetime or is this in a past lifetime, right? And then if it's a past lifetime, we do a specific journey for that past life. And I want to be really clear about that. It's not just like you go to a psychic and you get a past life reading. It's totally different. You go into that time of the wound when you actually died in that lifetime, and is what happens in that past life. And is what happens is you make a contract with your ego, right? And so if you were a healer and you were burned at the stake, right? You might never want to, your contract might be, if I ever heal again, I will die. Like, it's a very truncated contract, right? Or if you, let's say, I just did a past life the other day. A lady found her child in jail because she was a healer, and she made this bind, right? So you want to go in, you want to break that contract. And if you don't really break that contract, you just have this past life information that's literally opening up a wound again that you don't know what to do with. So you break the contract, you rewrite a new declaration, you are finding that soul piece and a gift of divination. And is what happens though in that past life is it follows you up in your RNA holographically. And I know that sounds crazy, but William Brown, he's a biophysicist who works under Nassim Haramein. So William Brown, the biophysicist, he literally explains how we have wormholes in our cells, just like there's wormholes in the universe. And that's how we dive into our past life. So those past life memories. So when we start dealing with the ancestral and the past life, that's how we're accessing them is through wormholes within ourselves. And that is coming from a scientist. So, you know, this work can be in the quantum science community, this work can be very easily explained. And so it's the same thing with the ancestral, right? And it's so interesting. We will carry the pain of our ancestors. A really common one is heart disease. And people come in and they're like, I have heart disease. It's hereditary, you know, and it's like, wow, you know, you just really made that a strong declaration, right? And let's explore that. So we'll go back and we'll call in the ancestors, or we'll go into the memory, and we will see where the heart broke. And that's where the dis-ease in the heart happened. But then because we're in this reality of 3D, it comes up in the RNA generation after generation, just like the Bible talks about, and it comes as heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Wow.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so you do all of these, and there are some people that will go, oh, you know, that person does past life regression, I'm going to go see them. Or, you know, I'm going to go see a specialist. However, like if I have something and I don't know what it is, if I come to see you, you will know the right modality because of the practice that you're tapping into.
Correct. So oftentimes, like when someone says, I want a shamanic session, I'm like, great. It could be one or more of, you know, inner child work, which I think is the most important. Hands down, if I could only pick one thing to do, one thing, it would be inner child work. That is the creme de la creme. That is the gem. But I will tell a person it could be past life, it could be the inner child, it could be, you know, soul retrieval, it could be destiny retrieval, it could be entity extraction, it could be whatever. In fact, I
don't really tell them what you're doing. You don't tell them the modality that you're working in. You just do it.
No, they know what's happening.
Okay.
They know what's happening because it's very interactive. Even though the person is in a state of slight regression or altered state of consciousness, we're working together.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the fact that you guys were working remotely. And then was this a phone session or Zoom?
Phone.
It was a phone session. And Jess, do you want to share why you felt it was better as a phone session?
Yeah. So, yes, Belinda had told me about you, Holly. And, you know, at first, again, I've done energy work in person. And I guess I had clung to this idea that you had to be in person, right? So anyways, I put that aside and I was like, fine, it's remote because I hear she's the best, so I gotta go. And the reason why I thought it was more advantageous for me was that I was able to be in a room, closed door, in a bed, and I was able to feel calm and in my own space. So for me, you know, who might be prone to anxiety or nervousness, I felt completely calm. And I think in order to go in these deep, as you said, kind of trance-like places, you really have to be in your body, calm. And, you know, not to say that I couldn't get there in person, but I think there was something great about me being in my own house, that I could just really just get in my bed, be in my clothes, in my space. And I was just so focused and I could really go anywhere because I felt my body was very tranquil.
And you were able to tap into emotions.
Yes. That was, sorry. So a big part of it was spoiler alert, I'm not a big crier. And I wish I was. All of my girlfriends, you know, I feel like cry 3 times a week. And I think that's beautiful. But not for me. I don't, I cry. I've been crying more. Wait, I should say this, Holly, which I don't think I told you. Since I've seen you, I cry more, which is beautiful because crying was something so hard for me as I couldn't tap into that emotion. I would go to other stronger emotions first. And lately, especially when I meditate, I will cry, which has been such an amazing release for me. So yeah, I think being remote, there was one thing we worked through, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And I, as Holly knows, I was hysterically crying. It wasn't a tear, it was hysterical. And I felt like I just released, like it was about an issue. So about 7 years of this thing I was holding on to, and I released it all, and I was hysterically crying. And yes, because I was remote, I wasn't self-conscious that she was looking at me or seeing me, because crying is a very intimate thing for me personally. So I was really able to just let it all come out.
Yeah. And I think that's important to note because oftentimes, in any situation, you feel a little bit awkward if you're going to just let go in front of somebody in somebody else's space that could have like a massage table, or you're sitting upright in a chair in front of somebody. Like, it's hard to be vulnerable. And so the fact that we can do this work remotely and in the privacy of your own home, I think is so phenomenally effective. And
and it's just as effective, which makes it, I had this idea like, oh, maybe it won't be as good because she's not physically there, like doing her pendulum over my body. No, like, and you even said, Holly, that you think sometimes maybe it is even more effective. And I felt that way. It's this comfort level, and I can just unleash, and you're breathing, and there was no self-consciousness, which is huge. I think when you're tapping into trauma, which is very revealing. And as we talked about inner child, we're going really, really deep, and you don't want to feel self-conscious because then it blocks you from going as far in as you can.
Yeah. Now, do we want to move into talking about what your trauma was, Mess, and then how sort of Holly worked on it?
Yeah, totally. Holly's the more articulate one. I feel like you are able, it's so hard to articulate it because it's like a feeling, as you said. I love that you said that. It's a feeling, and I wish I feel it. I just don't know how to say it,
Well, if I can, it is really hard to convey what is happening to somebody who's never experienced this work. I mean, it's a very hard concept because it's like, well, what do you mean you're using a pendulum? That sounds so smoke and mirrors, and but it's literally, I compare it to a well witch. If people know what a well witch is, on the farms they used to, or homesteads, they would take the willow branch, and the willow branch would literally go down when it sensed water under the earth, and that's where they would dig their well. And so, people would pay lots and lots of money. I mean, these men with cowboy boots and, big equipment would come out to drill the well, and they'd well witch it first, right, to see where to drill. And so there's something to this, and it's something unseen, something we can't really, it's like that unified field that it's there, but it's just so hard to explain, right? Because it's not something we can see. And so it's so hard to convince people that this measurement using the timelines of your chakra system with a pendulum, whether remote or in person, but it's like foolproof every time. I mean, it's even me, I've been doing this work for 15 years. And like just yesterday, I just had this really brief encounter with this woman who had been I'm a little peeved about this. She'd been going to a shaman for 20 years and she's my age, she's 50. She was in so much pain, so much mental anguish. I started asking her all these questions, never had this, never had that. Anyway, get her on the table and just like, boom, 3 years old. Well, she picked a stone out of my mesa. So people who come in person, this is my medicine bundle. There's 13 stones in here and they're all programmed to something. This woman picked one of the stones. Boom, went right to 3 years old. I said, when did you feel trapped? And she's like, the story came out. We got rid of the story. We brought in the soul piece. We illuminated her with light coming into her energy field. And I got a text the very next day that this was the least amount of pain she had felt in a very, very long time.
Wow.
So it's more of a testimonial thing than me. It's just so hard to explain. It's weird. And you get in, and the other cool thing is too, is when you start getting into these journeys with the person you're working with, either remotely or in person, like your consciousness syncs up and you begin to go on the journey together. Yes. And that's also really cool because, you know, you're in this different space still together.
You guys, this is so just exemplifies how the English language doesn't give us the tools to communicate in this way. And like, because we're all in this space and experiencing these things, we'll be sharing that with our kids and they'll grow up with this language, and it will not make it seem odd or weird or witchy or woo-woo. It's just like it comes naturally. We gotta like shift it.
True.
Well, and that's the thing too, is Jess totally nailed it. Energy and vibes, it's become so trendy. But I really feel like there's a big lack of knowledge out there, especially when it comes to like the past life regressions and the entity releasement. Like, I don't know everything, like I really don't, but there is absolute proper protocol to doing some of these things, especially with the entity releasement. I mean, you got to be super careful with that. And I feel like this whole new age trendy thing has become so filled with fluff that people really need to know there's some really heavy work and really transformational work that can come out of this modality for sure.
Yeah, and I'll say that I went through something very hard a few years ago when I was in LA at the time, and I had said to my friend, I need a real energy release of some sort. And I think it was that I was looking for Reiki healers at the time. And I had like 3 consultations on the phone. And I don't want to be negative or judgmental, but as kind of what Holly alluded to, they were trend people. Like, I didn't feel, again, I had shared what had happened, and the lack of empathy and support was astounding to me. You know, and you're paying a lot of money. It's LA. I understand it's a city, but I didn't feel connected to these people. I didn't feel drawn to these people, and I didn't feel like they could support me in what I needed at that moment. I didn't end up working. I worked with one of them, and she was fine. But it wasn't until you, Holly, that I realized, as you said, it's not just like someone holding crystals over you and being like, you're clear. Like it's, and I think that's what people think, you know, that someone just goes like this. Also, I like that you say this. It is a collaborative process. As much as Holly's working, I'm working too. I'm working a lot. I mean, I was exhausted afterwards. It is in a good way. Like, she just released a bunch of dark, excuse my language, shit that just all came out of me. So I think people also assume you just sit at a table like you're going to a spa and she just, you know, does what she does. No, it is a collaborative process. She's working hard and I'm working hard, and we're both really putting an effort to release what we need to release. And as you alluded to, the inner child, like I had to go back and see my child, and it's very emotionally draining in a positive way that needs to happen in order to release. And I think also when you go to see Holly or any practitioner, you yourself have to be ready and willing to go deep and dive, because I think that's the only way it works. When you yourself are surrendering to the fact that you're ready to face what can be a very traumatic experience, because you're diving into your past.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I honestly, like, I don't work with everybody, and not everybody wants to work with me. It goes both ways, right? Like, there's a lot of people who, I don't want to say they're not I mean, I don't want to sound negative, but there's a lot of people who don't want to do this work. I'll just put it at that, because it is hard and it's ugly. And the other thing is too, is that you have to be accountable for your part in it as well. Like, why did you stay in, an abusive situation? Or why did you, do what you did? Not you, Jess, like anybody coming in,
Yeah.
they have to be held accountable. And that's hard. There's not a lot of accountability in this day and age. But it's in that point when we do hold ourselves, excuse me, oh my, when we do hold ourselves accountable, then that's when we can literally start to shift out of it. It's if we just blame and point and blame and point, it's always out there. But when we're like, you know what? Yeah, I got to look at I got to look in the mirror now. That's when the change happens.
So when you say, Holly, that, sometimes you don't work with some people or some people don't choose you, is that determined during like the consultation call? Or do you feel like after one session, people leave because they're not ready to work? Like, what does that look like?
I usually have a phone conversation, and I just usually have a phone conversation, and I'll tell people, they'll be like, oh, I want to meet my spirit guides, and I want to know more about UFOs and stuff. And, I don't, no, seriously.
How is that healing work?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And they're like, I don't talk to my family because they're toxic. And then I'm like, well, we're going to work on like that toxicity, because you have to take care of that before you go do all the good fun stuff. And then right then and there, right? But I feel like I'm doing people a disservice if I'm going to just throw a bunch of fluff at them, because then I'm not being authentic.
Right.
So,
yeah, makes sense. Okay. So I have one more thought to share that Jess shared with me. Since Holly, I've been open to more love.
Yes.
I think that's really that's when we talk about, allopathic medicine and the side effects that you get from allopathic medicine that are always negative, that lead you to more allopathic medicine. This side effect that Jess got from working with Holly is being open to more love. Yes, please. I'll take that side effect any day.
It's a good side effect. Yeah. Again, since I've seen Holly, and I've seen Holly twice, so we've worked together twice, but I'll start with the first one because I felt that, kind of cracked me open, if you will. Yeah, I mean, I think I was holding on to old habits, old feelings, at the end of the day, we all protect ourselves. So I think we're quick to judge. We'll be like, oh, she's angry. She's this, they're that, whatever. At the end of the day, we do those more negative habits because we're trying to protect ourselves. So for me, vulnerability was hard, and due to trauma, a lot of the reason why it was hard for me to dig into vulnerability was based on childhood trauma, right? And with Holly, we released so much in me, and maybe I just thought of this now, but we released so much that I finally had room, if that makes sense. Like that dark energy, because we do a lot of, if I'm allowed to say this, Holly, is like releasing this dark and then putting in light.
Mhm.
So blowing out so much dark, I felt like, whoa, I feel lighter now. There's more space. I felt like there was just so much. And finally, we were able to bring that down and pour light into me, that I had more room to access these emotions that I hadn't been able to, based on protection, because it's just a lot. And yeah, we dealt with one issue specifically, and it was a parenthood issue. And I had gone to therapy for like 6 years about this issue. And not to say that the therapists weren't helpful in some ways, but they would give me tools and tell me how to do things. And I tried to implement them. But again, it was on a deeper level that I needed to figure it out. It was beyond my brain. It was in me. It was emotional. It was energetic. And that was what the crying was about. My hysterical crying was that. She just brought it up. I don't even remember what you said, but you were like, "Are you there?" And I was like bawling my eyes out. And I think because of that specific release, which was tied to parenting and love, that I had so much more warmth as a parent, as a person. And it wasn't just that I had more love to give, it's that I wanted more love too, which I think is interesting. So it wasn't that, I wanted to give all this love, but I also for the first time was like, oh, I would like some more love too. And I was more open and vulnerable to receive love, because I think people don't realize with love, it's not just about giving it, it's also a vulnerable thing to receive it. It's scary to be open to receive it. So yeah, I again, this warmth, this openness, and just all the light that you put in me, and all the darkness that I released. Yeah, I feel I just like love is, I don't know, I can't explain it, but yes, Holly.
Well, if I may, a lot of we're dealing with a lot of the root, sacral, and solar plexus chakras. So the 1, 2, and 3, but you didn't have your breakthrough. I call it a breakthrough until we got to your heart. That's when the breakthrough happened. And it was at that point that you really cracked. And I was on, and sometimes I'm glad it's remote too, because I'm on my end going like, oh, like they haven't cracked yet. They haven't cracked yet. Right. Like I'm over here, like, my pendulum's going, like I'm going up and down. I'm looking at my notes. Like, I mean, it's probably pretty comical to see me on my end. And I like get almost, it's like a mission. It's a mission to get a person into that breakthrough. And I was like, okay, are we going to be successful? Like, is this going to happen? And then boom, right when we got to your heart. And I was like, whew, okay, it happened. And then at that point, you just know, you can hear it. You can hear the silence, or you can hear the sobbing, or you can just hear the shift, right? And so, yes, we did it.
Yeah, we did. And the funny thing is, and Holly, out of respect for the modality, she's like, you can't talk about it for 3 days. That's the guidelines. I won't say rule, guidelines. And after it happened, I was like, I just want to tell someone what happened. And I told you, Belinda, I was like, I can't tell you for 3 days. So I just kind of had to like internalize and talk to myself about what just happened, because it was so transformative, but I couldn't tell anyone for 3 days.
Okay, well, there's a reason for that, right? Okay, like
no, I think it's good. I just wanted to shout it from the rooftop.
I love that, but we create like this sacred container, right? This very sacred container. So if you were to tell Belinda, okay, right, but we want to protect you or the client from telling the wrong person who's like, oh, that sounds super stupid, like you fell for that. Like that's what because there are a lot of skeptics out there, and you know, a lot of non-believers, and that's what because once your psychic is so wide open at that point, right? Your energy, your vibration is just like catapulted up like flights and flights of stairs, right? And then it's just like you get derailed at the knees. And that's what we don't want to happen, because then you start questioning everything. And, you know, this work is real, because I have seen so much crazy stuff happen, especially like when we start getting into the forgiveness of things. And then, you know, I've seen this when I used to assist my teacher in the medicine wheel, and we do this one thing called the sand painting, and we shift energy through objects. And then, you know, the students would always be like, on my way home, my girlfriend called and apologized that she dumped me the way she did, or, you know, this person called and apologized. And so I've seen so many, I've witnessed so many other people's experiences that, I mean, this work is absolutely real.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is amazing. And especially like you both were saying earlier, the side effect of it, right? When you could be taking an allopathic medicine, and, you know, our mind is so powerful that if we can rewire it enough, we don't need external bottles of things to take on a daily basis.
I do want to also talk about the breathwork element. I think that for me specifically is huge to the access to the deeper emotions, because the way we kind of blow things out and we do deep breath work, and breath work is new to me. So I had just discovered breath work. I think it's been less than a year. And the first time I did it, I thought I was going to pass out. It's like this weird, I felt high. I mean, just from breathing, right? If people don't know what breath work is, it's very intense, quick breathing. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it. So, you know, a lot of the times when we're anxious or anything, people are like, breathe so deeply, you know, they have the like, breathe in for 4, breathe out for 4, whatever. And I'm not saying that's great, but there's something about breath work that is like you just took, and I don't do drugs, but what I imagine to be drugs, taking a bunch of happy drugs, where I felt I don't know, you just access, you go into another space with breath work. And I remember that specifically with my breakthrough, which was I was breathing, and it's like you're breathing so deeply, and it cracks you open, this breath work. So I think that's a very important element to it as well, because I think it allows you to get out of your head, your thinking head. We're all thinking all the time. We're always thinking. We're on our phones. There's so much stimulation. And the breath work, instead of like breathing slowly, which does calm your heart rate down and kind of calms you down, breath work, you do not have time to think. You are like breathing so fast and so intensely that you go out of body and you access that kind of deeper layer beneath you. And I think that is a huge part of the work for me and the healing process. I don't know how you feel, Holly, about that.
So Yes, and we're literally creating or releasing different chemicals in our body with the breath because we're oxygenating. And I'm not, I need to look this up, but I'm pretty sure someone also told me that it activates your pineal gland to breathe. And that's where we have kind of our spirit. It's like our inner Stargate is our pineal gland. So, and also when Belinda just came to a ceremony that I did, a prayer ceremony, and we make a mandala, and you breathe into each ingredient that you make this mandala with, right? Because it's life. So you're breathing in the breath of life and out. So it's literally like pumping the oxygen through your blood. And that's what gives you that high feeling. And also too, when you're in this session, I'm sort of veering off, but we're also working so fast. So it's like, okay, breathe sadness out of your sacral chakra. And then we're jumping, right? We're jumping back and forth. Like, okay, now breathe devastation out of your solar plexus or whatever it is. So it's a quick. And I think that also, it takes your mind into that higher state instead of that analytical state. And also too, I want to add, totally digressing. I think talk therapy can be helpful, but where I really have a discrepancy with it is all the labels that they start putting on people. And in the shamanic realm, we want to take all those layers off. There's literally a practice that we do in the medicine wheel in the direction of the east. Maybe it's the north, whatever, the north or the east, I don't remember. And you're literally writing, it's very tedious. You're writing everything you've ever been called, everything, every label.
Oh, wow.
And then you're tying it around a stick with a red ribbon, right? Everything has a meaning. And then at the end, you're burning it. And it's so weird because we're all in a contained environment. I mean, we're outside, but we're all under the same little weather umbrella. And it's so interesting because some people's labels will just boom, like light up and burn. And other people's, like, they can't get it started and it's burning really dense, right? And it's because they're afraid to let go of those labels. But when everything starts to burn, you literally feel a shift in the air. You literally feel it lighten. So I have a lot of people and they're like, they come to me and they've been to counseling and they've just got this plethora of labels. And I'm like, oh, let's just get rid of them.
No to labels.
Yeah, no to labels.
Now I know that Holly generally recommends seeing you 3 times, right, for the full effect of everything. Are you guys doing breath work all 3 times? Or is it just for the first time?
Who do you want to answer?
Either or.
Go ahead, Hal.
Okay, so I do like to do 3 sessions, and in a perfect world, it's the inner child work. Then the second session is the past life, and then the third session is a destiny retrieval. But so many people, really, they've done so much work, and then one session is really, really good and really gets them to a place where they need to be for a very long time. But every single session is, yes, we're going through that process where we're breathing out more layers, deeper layers, right, through that breath work.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a reminder. So, Jess, do you think that after the first session with Holly, did you feel like up from that point until your second session that you were consistently still working, like even energetically or emotionally, you were still working, and then even now you're still working because of these sessions?
Yes, 100%. It was wild that, again, we worked on very specific things, and something that was, we all know triggers, so there was something that was triggering me like crazy for years and years and years. And after working with Holly, the trigger was gone. it was a physical trigger. So it wasn't like, oh, someone says something and I'm like, eh, you know, it was physically, something used to trigger me when this physically happened. And after our session, the thing happened because it was a common practice physically that happens all the time. And it happened and I was like, oh my God, I'm comfortable in this position. I'm comfortable with this physicality. That beforehand, I would get triggered. I would tense up. I would get uncomfortable. I would be like, oh God, I'm going to have to figure out how to get out of here as fast as I can. And once I worked with Holly, I was like, oh, this feels nice. It was, this tension was completely released, and it might have been tied to trauma. I don't know what it was tied to, but all I know is that before Holly, this thing would make me so uncomfortable and I was so triggered. And after Holly, I no longer had that trigger. And I felt that. I felt it immediately, but it continued. So it wasn't like, oh, we did this work and then just this next week, everything was great and then everything went to shit. It wasn't that. I felt, yes. And I think you talk about it, that over the next 3 to 5 weeks, everything energetically is being implemented. And I felt that, yes, throughout those 3 to 5 weeks. And when I went for a second time, it was to deal with other things unrelated to anything we spoke about the first session. So the first session, it's not like I'm like, oh, I need to go back in. All that's great. It was that other things I wanted to talk about and more modern things that were happening present and where it was in the past. Oh, sorry about that.
That's so great. You know, but I love that. Just consistent work, because we all have so many layers, right? And so it's basically, you know, Holly, through her work, is helping you hold your hand with your higher self to move through all these layers and just continually accessing more joy. I'm really grateful that we got this time together, because I think that Jess did a really beautiful job of articulating. Like, when we started this interview, you had said you didn't have the words, but as we went through, and I think it's because you have a writer's mind, that you use such descriptive words to describe. And so we could really kind of tap into the feeling of what you experienced with your time with Holly. So thank you for that.
Oh, I hope so. It's so hard because I want people to, I'm so sorry. Okay. I want to convey what a beautiful experience I had. And again, as we all talked about privately, you know, we want to keep my personal life personal, and what we talked about was very deep traumatic experiences of my childhood. So I wanted to convey it without kind of, you know, throwing up all the things that has happened. So I really hope I could convey what a beautiful experience I had. And I yeah, thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate this time a lot. I think you articulated it very well. I don't have the writer's mind. I'm still blown away by the knot analogy that you did. I love that. But I do want to say, a lot of people do have huge transformational experiences in one session, but I do just want to say, like, this isn't a magic pill for everybody. And, you know, some sessions we almost get to that breakthrough, right? And it's just because it might not be the right time, or the person's not totally ready. But I will say that this is very profound work. I wish 100% of my clients had the exact results you did. Unfortunately, it's lower. I would say it's more, you know, like 80% have these like huge breakthroughs. But there are some people that it's like, yeah, you need some more, you need to work on this a lot more.
Yeah, and I will say that, just as you said, it's not a magic pill. I want to say that although everything I did with Holly was extremely transformative. It doesn't mean that like after I see her, I'm like fixed or solved. Fixed is the wrong word, but I'm not like my problems haven't magically disintegrated. I still have so much work to do, but she has given me kind of the tools and the foundation to do that. So she gives me I am statements afterwards. And a lot of the times I do that. I'll just put my hand on my heart and I'll say, I am, and then the words that we talked about in our session. And then also with, as you said, that I have more love. Interestingly enough, I have more feelings. So even like when I'm having a harder day, I think before I would kind of numb it or, try to keep myself busy or, whatever it is that we do that most people do when they don't want to feel the feelings. And I think since seeing you, Holly, and releasing all that, I'll be like, wow, I'm having a really hard day today. Like I feel sad. And I feel things that I normally previously maybe didn't, or I would just brush past. So that's, I think, as you said, like, if you're not ready, because that's uncomfortable, right? We all want to be like, every day is great. Everything's fantastic, but that's not reality. We all have hard days. And I'm able to feel those hard days deeply, but I think that is that transformative way that I'm going to push through because I feel them versus numbing them or pushing them away. So that has been a huge gift too. And I said that to my friend, I was like, gosh, I've been feeling things, like feeling a lot of deep things that I normally wouldn't feel. And I think that's scary to people. And you have to be ready to face those feelings. So, yeah.
Yes. That was really fun. Did anybody else have anything else they want to add?
I'm just really grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for you guys taking the time to share my work. I really am, because Belinda knows me better than Jess, obviously. I don't put myself out there that much. So I know you guys are both very busy, and I really have an immense amount of gratitude for both of you guys. So thank you.
I have gratitude for you both as well.
Same.
I think this is beautiful. I hope that, I think it's great to have women talking, anything healing, energy work. I mean, I feel grateful as well for it all.
Yeah.
Sorry, Belinda, I cut you off.
No, grateful that, Jess is willing to share her story and that Holly's available to sort of give a little bit more background to it. It's important. This work is important. Everybody on this earth has trauma. And however you can tap into that and move through it, do it. If it's not Holly, it's somebody else. But let's just keep doing the work.
I think I'm glad you said that too. Sorry, Holly. I wanted to say that I think people are also scared of trauma and accessing that because, again, it is scary and it's a lot of work. And I just want to say something that we did, Holly, because I think this is another imagery that will help people with inner child work, because I think also inner child is very trendy right now too. And I don't think people understand what it means. And I've done a lot of inner child work. I have an amazing therapist, but unfortunately, because I moved, I can't see her, but we've done a lot of trauma and inner child work. So I think when talk therapy doesn't work for you, find a therapist who does trauma work, because I think those are the therapists that really can access that. And it's not so much energy work, but it's trauma work. But anyway, something that Holly does, I think with everyone, but what she did with me was, as she said, you find the present day, disruptor, and you're like, well, where did that come from? What's the source of that? And we go back to if it's 0 to 7 or a teenage. And something from our first session was something very traumatic happened to me when I was 17. And we go back to, she tells you to pick one memory, right? Because that trauma lasted a long time. So she said, pick one specific memory of that trauma. And it's a very dark place to go, right? And I remember, and so we go into that memory, if you will, and we sit in that memory, and I talk her through like, what's happening. Here I am, I'm sitting here. This is what happens. This is, you know, and I walk her through the memory. And then we blow that out as we talk, we use the breath work and imagery and all that, but we go in that memory and then we check back in with that child. And that's the interesting work of the inner child, is that now I'm coming now as my 36-year-old self, and I'm talking to my 17-year-old self. And I'm telling her, it's okay. Like, I'm here, you're safe. And that's the connective tissue, if you will, with the inner child work and the trauma work to my current self, and kind of repairing all that. So that's what's so magical about. It's not just talking about the trauma, right? A lot of us can just talk about our trauma. It's going in the trauma. So I'm now in my trauma, and I'm my present day self is talking to my child, or that the 17-year-old self, and we're finding a way to heal together. And that's the work. That was very transformative. So I wanted to say that, because I think imagery wise, and people understanding what inner child work is and the trauma work, versus it's not just like you think of it and it goes away. It's like you have to put those two, that memory and then your present life together, and take my child's hand and tell her we're going to be okay. If you want to add to that, Holly, that's just what I thought of and wanted to say that.
No, it's beautiful. And I do that it's a soul retrieval process, because I'm doing stuff energetically on my end that I don't want to quite give away. Well, Jess, or the person I'm working with, is doing their part, right? So I'm doing stuff with their energy field, and then they're doing stuff within their mind's eye, and then that's how it comes together into like this whole completion. And then so a lot of times I'll be like, wherever, you know, okay, let your child go into the garden, we're going to move on. And so we move on, and then I'll say, okay, check back in. What is the child doing? And then a lot of times, you know, they're playing with flowers, they're dancing, they're swinging, whatever. And then you're getting a glimpse of yourself in your divine essence. When all the trauma, when all the 3D, when all the hustle and bustle is stripped away, that's you in your divine essence.
And that's, I mean, now, like, Jess, you just kind of introduced like a whole confusing aspect, because our minds are so trained to like the linear timeline. And what we're actually, when you're working on this stuff, we're taking away that timeline, because you're just there, and we can be in different places at the same time.
Yes. Just like in a destiny retrieval or a past life, right? We're skipping different timelines. And I mean, sometimes this work even goes off planet. I mean, it's limitless. It's so limitless. Like sometimes it's just like, we're going to, oh, well, what? Okay, let's just go with it. But yeah, you're literally like, especially with the destiny retrieval, you're literally moving into the future to pull that destiny closer to you.
That's like a whole nother conversation.
Part two.
We'll continue this.
Yeah.
We'll bring more testimonials on. All right, ladies. It's been fun.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you so much.
I really hope this draws people into energy work, because I think it's truly magical.